The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thanks so much for joining us today. My name's Deborah Cartisser, and I'm coming to you from 12 Points Wealth Management. 12 Points is a wealth management firm that deals with individuals, providing wealth management and advisory services. And we also work with retirement accounts, providing corporate retirement services as well. And I am Deborah Cartisser. I work on the individual side, providing advice to individuals. My clients are typically women, and I work with women in transition, helping them to gain mastery of their financial world. And I particularly like helping women in transition because often they haven't worked on their finances before, and this can be a really empowering experience. So today's topics, I'm steering clear of the legal aspects of divorce. I'm not an attorney. We don't provide legal advice. We do provide financial advice and help our clients through the divorce process. So some of the things that we wanted to talk about here today are building your team and your network of advisors to help and support you, what documents you need to gather, whether you're going through a mediated process or a legal process through the court system. You need to gather documents for yourself and for them. Part of this is going to be assessing and creating a budget, both past and future focused, and managing your existing credit, saving in your own name. Really important piece of this is revising your estate plan, managing your existing debt, and then how to handle your home as part of all this. So really, seeking advice and educating yourself is so important in all of this. It gives you more options, and jumping right into the divorce process is not how we would advise that you do it, but gathering information and sitting down with people and understanding how the process works and how to best prepare yourself for it is going to give you the best outcome. And if you're wondering if your marriage isn't going to last or you're having issues, because let's face it, COVID has really changed the landscape of a lot of marriages, both positively and negatively. Going through this and thinking about this process can empower you regardless of what happens next in your marriage, in your personal life. The one thing that I'd like people to really focus on is setting goals. Where are you now and where do you want to be in the future? I think it's so important as people are managing their personal lives, but also managing the financial part of this. So much of what we do as financial advisors is focused on people's goals. What are they trying to get to? What are they trying to achieve and accomplish for themselves and in their family is really important. We can't help them get there if we don't know where they're trying to go. So really learning about the process and how it works is going to help you to maintain options and to be able to steer things in the direction you want them to go in. And making sure that your investment advisor is part of this process is really critical. And whatever you do, don't go it alone. So, important piece of this is enlisting your professionals and building a professional team that's there to support you. And there's a couple of different ways that divorce can go. You can have a mediator involved in it, or you can go through the courts and have an attorney involved in it. And really asking questions, taking people up on typically they have a free 30 minutes to give to you, to talk to you, to assess whether you and they are a good fit together. And make use of this. Write down your questions, keep a journal. If there's anything a journal can do for you, it's really to help mitigate the chaos that goes with this process. I think it's nice to think about, well, I want to get a divorce and I know where I want to end up. But getting from here to there is fraught with a lot of emotion and a lot of potholes that people can get stuck in. So making sure that you're staying on top of what you need to do and asking questions along the way is going to make things very different for you. So as far as a mediator goes, this is somebody who helps the two of you arrive at a solution. They're going to help you through the process and It's typically a less expensive option. It's typically a quicker option, and you're going through it without litigation. You're discussing the things that need to be discussed. It doesn't mean it's not contentious at times, but the mediator is helping you through the process. It's, as I said, it's typically faster than going through the court system. You're doing this through the mediator instead of through the attorney and through the court system. And the results are confidential. The results of a court case are not confidential. So that's something also to keep in mind. For an attorney, you need your own attorney. So make sure that you have an attorney that is your own and separate from your spouse, and make sure that you're dealing with somebody who's involved in family law or divorce. You don't want to use your real estate attorney. You don't want to use your business attorney. You want somebody who's really focused on divorce. You're going to have a better outcome. And you want someone who's going to value a quick settlement, but also has the chops to fight on your behalf if they need to. And I suggest interviewing at least 3 people. You're going to get a good sense of who they are, how they mesh with you, and what their process is like. And the other person in this that is very important is the coach or the therapist. There are people who specialize now in divorce coaching and therapy centered around just divorce. And they can really help you to create a deliberate future and to process all the emotion that comes with all of this. I think it's about creating action around what you want to see so you can get past the emotions to make your decisions really purposeful. And having somebody who is objective and on your side of the court can be very helpful in the process. And, as part of your daily and monthly routine, it's so important to create space to process all that you're going through, to honor what you're going through as you go through this. It's easy to say, oh, I just got to get up and get on the treadmill and get through my day and take care of my kids and myself. But you need time to unpack all that's happening to you and strategies that are going to help you to relieve stress. You will emerge better for having done it. So if there's anything you can do for self-care along the way, do it. It'll change your life. Another thing to make you aware of is something called discernment counseling or coaching. And it's really a specific therapy sort of system, I guess we'd call it, that is devised for the situation when one person is ready to leave the marriage and the other doesn't want to. So rather than just going through therapy, couples therapy to discuss the issues at hand when one person's sitting there sort of having mailed it in, the discernment counseling really helps you to get to that specific place where both of you are sitting and help you work around that. So that's something to think about and to look into, discernment coaching and counseling. More important, I think, in all of this, in terms of the process and how you get to the end of where you are, is enlisting financial help. Get financial help along the way. Speak with your investment advisor if you have one. If you have somebody that you and your spouse are working with, they have to maintain confidentiality. So I would start there. You want to get some help with your budget review, making sure that the numbers that you have make sense, making sure you haven't forgotten anything, making sure that you're putting together a really solid budget for your future needs is so important. And they can also and should be providing you with projections. So you can look at your budget. It's meeting your needs at this point in time. How is this going to serve you into the future? You really need to future test these projections in your budget to make sure that the numbers that you're working with are going to help you into the future. And if they're not, that you're going into it with your eyes wide open, realizing either A, I need to make more money, or B, I need to change my settlement or make different decisions. So the projections are so critical to this process, and anything that you're negotiating on the financial side should be run through your financial models, should be shown to you as a different projection. So if you're evaluating 2 different choices in the negotiations process, you can't really negotiate if you don't understand the financial impact that they're going to have for you. So make sure that you're working with your financial advisor throughout this process to help you run the numbers and future test them and help you build a plan for the future as well. And then as far as the financial piece goes, have your financial advisor review the settlement before you sign on the dotted line so that both of you have a clear understanding of what you're signing and the impact of what you're signing. So that couldn't be more important in all of this. It's one thing to come up with a budget. It's another to be able to sort of future test this out. So that's where the financial people can really be of help to you. We talked a little bit about support for yourself, and some things to keep in mind in this are preserve and really protect your confidentiality. Don't communicate with people that you're not ready to share with. Try not to go into a bad day and share with your coworker if they're not somebody who's really on your sort of tight little discrete team. You don't want to regret having overshared somewhere down the line. And maintain neutrality on social media. This is something that we, preach to our children all the time, especially our teenagers, and make sure that you're taking your own advice in this. Anything that's not neutral on social media can be used against you, and you don't want to have that being pulled into play. And then remembering, if it's written, it can be pulled into your proceedings. So whether it's a text message, an email message, if you're wondering if you should say it, the answer is don't. And help yourself along the way by keeping that in mind. If it's written, it can show up in court. Monitor your mood and stay on top of it. Get people who are close to you to help you with feedback there. It's easy to get sucked into the depression of all of this, and there's so many emotions swirling around in this process, and grief and fear, and it's a lot to take in. So if you can take any part of your day to have a future focus, where you're thinking about future facets of your life that you want to develop, or future goals that you have, or anything to keep you going. Studies have shown that people who are future focused are less likely to suffer from depression than those who aren't. So it's just another little gem to bring into your daily life if you can. And then find others who are going through the divorce process, either a support group or a network group that can help you as you go through this, to be supportive. They're somebody who's either gone through it or is on the other side of it, and they can really understand you in a way that others can't, such as your best friend who's never been married, or your sister-in-law who's never been divorced. You really want a space where you can have authentic communication and support, along with confidentiality. And along the lines of confidentiality, we suggest setting up a new private email account that nobody knows about, except those that you communicate with very closely, and encourage those who are close to you to use that new account. A big part of the process, the financial process, is gathering together your documents. You're going to need this regardless of how your situation ends up. Excuse me. So the things that you're going to need to do as part of the financial process are tax returns, pay stubs. You want to know what you're making, what your partner is making. You're going to have to give this information to the mediator, the judge, the attorney. Everybody along the way is going to have this information. Excuse me. These are things that everybody should be doing on a regular basis. Every few years, you should be brushing off your documents and making sure you have a handle on what you have and where it is. So this is something that we think of as sort of a spring cleaning every year. Make sure that you have all your bank account statements and investment account statements, and you're going to want current balances on those, as well as the account numbers and the titling on the accounts, who owns it. You want to look at your property ownership. What do you have for property ownership? Where are the deeds if the property is paid off and owned fully? And where's the mortgage information? How are these things titled as well? You want to know, are they in individual name, in joint name? And did any come into the marriage as personal property for one of you before you got married? You want to obviously be on top of your credit card statements and any loan information. For the loan information, you're going to want to know the rates and the terms of each of the loans. Find employee documents and handbooks if you can. Excuse me, I'm having a coughing fit here, so my apologies. The employee document handbooks can be really important in tracking information that your spouse is entitled to that you may not be aware of because it's not part of your normal monthly budget. So it sort of gets overlooked and forgotten about. But things like stock options, employee stock purchase plans, things like that that are out there that you may not be aware of are really important, and they should be part of your negotiation process. Any kind of insurance that you're offered and things like that should all be accounted for. So if you can find those things, it's really important to have or to make part of your proceedings. You want your retirement account statements. Those are marital property as long as the retirement account was created during the marriage. So it may be in your individual name, but it's part of marital property if you contributed to it during the marriage. You want to gather all your insurance policies, whether it's life insurance, long-term care insurance, auto, umbrella insurance. All those things should be brought into your document folder. You're going to need to look at all of them. Social Security statements, these are online rather than in paper. So you'd have to go online to get your statement, but pull your own, and you can request that your spouse provide his as well. You're going to want to look at car titles, who owns the cars, and whether they're outright. If there's loans associated with them, you need that information too. And then start creating a list of personal property, anything that you hold that's of value in the marriage, whether it's artwork, jewelry, things that might be held in safe deposit boxes. Don't forget things that might be in storage. You're not creating a list of, the living room couch that no one's going to really want anymore. You're thinking about things that are of value and need to be part of your negotiation process. Another thing to think about that people can lose track of are pension accounts. So this is a type of account that provides income streams to the retiree. And they may not be entitled to it now, but they're probably building wealth in an account. If they're an armed forces officer, they're a city or state employee, a teacher, those professions that have pensions, you need to get a copy of the pension account because that should be part of your negotiation process as well. And then if either of you are self-employed, you're going to want to get your business account information and the tax returns associated with that. So those should be brought into the accounts as well. And then you're starting to create this living, breathing document of what you have and where it is. Excuse me for a second. So as you gather all these documents together, you're going to start building a net worth statement, and it's divided into assets and liabilities. So what do you own and what do you... And double checking this is pulling your credit report, making sure that you see all sources of your debt. You want to make sure that your spouse hasn't pulled anything out that you aren't aware of, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. You want to list all the passwords to the online accounts you have and figure out what you don't have access to and just list it. You don't have to go snooping for it, but just list what you don't have access to it. And then you're going to want to build a budget for the current and future. You want to make sure that you're forward-looking and backward-looking in the budget process. So what are we talking about here? We want you to go back and look at what you spent over the past couple of years. If you have a year-end credit card statement, that's a great place to start. And really looking at things like what were some of the major expenses, and look throughout the year because you want to make sure you're pulling in things that are seasonal, like snow removal and things like that. And from there, you're going to want to create a new budget based on where you're going to live and how. You may not have all the answers to it, but you can at least start putting line items in there, like, either mortgage or rent or something along those lines. And then things that are going to need to be either part of the home that you own now or part of your new living situation. And you're not going to have it perfect, but you're going to get started on what you know you need. And then as part of that budget, you're going to want to include future expenses beyond simply what it takes to run your household. So if you've got little kids, do they need braces? What are you doing about travel? Is that something you want to work into your budget going forward? Do your kids have to be educated for college still? And if that isn't saved for, you need to begin discussing the plan for that. Are you planning to contribute to adults, children who get married? All those things should be line items in part and parcel of your divorce settlement. And some of the things that can help, as I mentioned before, an annual credit card statement can really go a long way towards helping you assess where things go and how you're spending. Another thing to do is to put your current expenses, put everything on a credit card, and then you can track it that way. And keep in mind that you're only doing it for a few months at a time, but also make sure that you are paying it off at the end of every month. Don't let the balance run up just because you're trying to track expenses. You'll cripple yourself if you start with that. Another thing that's really helpful is mint.com. You sign up for this online and you you link up your current accounts that you spend through, and it will help you categorize your expenses and your spending. It can be very useful. The most important thing that you need to keep track of throughout this whole process is a great understanding of what you spend and what you need. If you can stay focused on that, you're going to come out of this a whole lot better off rather than going into it blind. A big piece of all this is managing your credit. If you don't have a credit card in your name, you need to start one now. It's a lot easier to start one when you're married and before the divorce process has begun than after you're divorced, when you're on your own and you've never had credit in your name and you're trying to get it. It'll be much harder to have somebody grant that to you. So start now if you don't have anything in your own name. Start a new credit card and begin to build your credit history. So really the name of the game is borrowing it, but paying it back, with the emphasis on paying it back. But you could do something simple like put all your groceries on it, and then the end of the month, making sure that you set the money aside and you pay all that back, pay all of your gas on it and then pay it back. What they're looking for is the history of using the card and paying it off. And anything that you can close, we'll get to this in a little bit more detail in the debt portion of things, but close any joint accounts that you can. If you as a couple can pay off any of your debts, do so. It'll make things easier. One of the hardest things to negotiate is debt. And if you can't, then freeze your credit. So freeze your credit and make sure that no one can take out money under your Social Security number. And make sure that you're continuing to receive statements on anything and everything that has your name on it. When you are ready to move forward and alert your creditors of the divorce, you need to do so. Obviously, that comes with a change of address, but simply letting them know that you're divorced so somebody can't call up and claim to be your spouse and abuse your credit. And throughout this, making sure that your balances are continuing to be paid. So make sure that you're at least making minimum payments. You don't want to have unpaid bills affect your credit rating in any of this. So the next important piece is really revising. Oops, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Little glitch there. Having money in your own name is so important. Regardless of how solid your marriage is, everybody should have a little bit of money in their own name. It doesn't have to be vast savings, but if you don't have a separate bank account, now's the time to create one. And we also suggest having cash on hand. Saves cash in a safe place that no one's going to find if you ever need it. It doesn't have to be vast sums of cash, but something that can get you to a safe place if you need to go there and get you help if you need it. So squirreling away a little cash is really good for everyone to have in their home. Just in case the power goes out, you can't get to an ATM, whatever the situation may be, having a little bit of cash in your home is advisable. And then starting to build your own nest egg. If it's not going to cause trouble in marital relations, if you can take a little bit from your paycheck and put it into your own savings account and even tell your spouse or partner about it along the way, that can be psychologically very helpful. So eventually what you're going to also have to do is the accounts in your own name, you're going to have to change the beneficiaries on things like retirement accounts and life insurance accounts as the divorce process goes on. So keep that in mind as part of all this. A really important piece of this is revising your estate plan, making sure that you keep your documents updated as you go through this process. And going to the same attorney that you used to create your original documents can save you a little time and a little money. If you've never worked with anyone before, now's the time to start. But getting to an attorney who does estate planning, and again, not somebody who does real estate closings, not somebody who's a business attorney, really focus on someone who's an estate planning attorney will help you. And making sure that you've got some key documents taken care of in all this. And these can be done before you finish the divorce process as well. So the durable power of attorney is the person that you have chosen who controls your finances if you're unable to act on your own behalf. So let's say you're in a car accident, you have something minor that's happened to you, and you are temporarily unable to take care of yourself, and you're still alive. The durable power holder can pay bills on your behalf and access all of your finances and basically manage them for you. So you want to make sure that if you and your spouse are in a contentious relationship, that you get him or her off of this document. So you want to think about who you're going to appoint here. And it's important also to know that you can't just walk into a financial institution with a durable power of attorney and they will then turn over the account to you. That's not how it works. They're called springing powers within the document. So it typically requires either a court appointment or a court acknowledgement of your incapacity or a doctor's notice saying that you're infirm and unable to act on your own behalf. So you've got to have supporting documents for this to use it. The other really important document to change is your healthcare proxy. Obviously, this is the person who makes medical decisions on your behalf if you're not able to do so. So getting that dusted off and in place is really important. And the other thing to think about is the flow of your assets. After your death, what happens to your assets? Well, typically in most estate plans, it flows through to the surviving spouse. So if your surviving spouse is not going to be in the picture, what happens next? If you've got really young children, then you might want to put it in trust for them with an independent trustee. And if they're under 21, you have to put it in trust for them. But that gets overly complicated. So think about a trust and who you would appoint as trustee to help them on your behalf and who would be operating for them on your behalf if you're gone. So that's another important document that will get created as part of your estate plan that your attorney will work on for you. So those three things are really important: the durable power, the healthcare proxy, and who would be the trustee for your kids' trust if you're no longer alive. Another component that's so important in all of this is managing debt. This is a highly contested part of divorce proceedings. Who pays for what? And as I said before, trying to pay off as much debt as you can jointly before your divorce is finalized is optimal. And I know that optimal doesn't always happen. So if you can't close the joint accounts, then freeze them. Freeze your credit. Make sure that nobody can get to your credit, whether it's in any circumstances without your consent. As part of your documentation on debt, make sure that you're identifying any premarital debt. Anything that existed before the two of you got together as a couple should be reported separately. So things like student loan debt come to mind. Anything that your partner may have taken out before you got into the picture is important to have separate. And remember that the lender is going to come after anybody who's named on the account. So if you have a divorce decree that talks about who's going to pay what debts, you need to go right away to those lenders and get your name removed from the account if you're not responsible for the debt anymore. So just remember that if your name is on the debt, you owe it. So get your name off anything that you're no longer responsible for. And again, monitoring all the accounts, making sure that you're seeing the statements and you're going over them on a regular basis. Everybody should be doing that. It's sort of good financial hygiene, as we say. Making sure that you're paying your bills monthly. Protecting your credit rating through this process is really important. You don't want to emerge from your divorce with poorer credit than you went into it with. So keep that in mind. Next piece of this, and as a issue for a lot of couples, is the home. Who's going to stay in the home? So think in advance about who's going to stay in the home, and remember that it's the place that you and your family have been, and it's so important. And It also comes with financial responsibility. And so that's a component of this as well. One of the things that we advise is don't move out if you want to stay in the home, because moving out can affect your interest in the property. But obviously, this is not something that we advise if your safety is at stake or that of your children. If your safety is at stake, get out and talk to your attorney, your mediator, your law enforcement person to advise you on what to do next. But take care of your personal safety first and foremost. And continuing to pay the mortgage and documenting what you pay as you go along is very important. So if you're paying it separately, then and each person is contributing, then document what you're paying and make sure you have good records for that. Another really important piece of this is, and this goes to the budgeting component, is assessing the expenses related to maintaining the home. So this isn't simply cutting the home in half and making sure that, oh, we'll sell it in 5 years and we'll split the proceeds. That isn't really equal, because whoever's living in that house is paying to maintain it for those 5 years. So make sure that you're bringing that piece into the negotiation process and looking at the budgeting involved for that. And your financial person can probably help you come up with some numbers or some suggestions on where to look for some of these expenses. But making sure you're looking at things like ongoing expenses like landscaping, like the painting of the house that takes place every 5 to 7 years. Maintenance items, things like that. So those are all really important things that you're doing as you own that house that's different from the person who's out renting an apartment. Also look for big upcoming expenses. You know, you may want to have someone come and look at the home to assess what needs to be done on it. Having someone take a look at the roof. Is the roof more than 20 years old? Does it need to be replaced? Do you need to do maintenance work on the house before it sells? Do you need a new HVAC system? Is it 20 years old and needing to be replaced? Think about those kinds of things. Get a budget around them and some numbers around those items and bring that into your negotiation process. You want to make sure that that's part of your agreement. And as is typical, I think, in a lot of properties, particularly now and particularly in New England, if you've owned your home for a while, there's going to be a capital gain as part of that. So you bought it at one price and it's now worth substantially more. Well, there's a gain involved in that, which everybody's going to think about and probably bring into the negotiations. But what about the liability that goes with that? So you have a tax liability. You have to pay taxes on the capital gain involved. So make sure that you're tracking both the increase in the property value and also the capital gain tax that goes with that. Those are important things to keep note of. So then in terms of key takeaways, obviously putting your kids first is so important. And I have a dear attorney in New York, a divorce attorney, who says that people need to remember to love their kids more than they dislike their spouse. And I think that's just a nice thing to keep in the back of your head as emotions get high and things get charged around that, to really try and put your kids first and get them the support that they need as well. If you can bring them a supportive person, therapist, other adult who can be objective and hear their perspective in all of this, it can be really helpful to them. And if they're trained in a professional, even better. But, you know, there's your side of the story, there's your spouse's side of the story, and then there's your kid's side of the story. And they're all three very different. So getting them support is so important. And throughout all of this, stay on top of your budget. I can't stress that enough. It's so important to know your numbers and have them mastered. It's going to help you to sleep at night, to know you know your numbers. And remembering that everything can be negotiated. You want to negotiate it right the first time, get your professionals involved, get people to take a second look, like your financial advisor, to make sure the numbers are working and that people haven't forgotten about something in all of this. And making sure that you're setting future goals and doing something a little bit where time allows to work towards those future goals, making sure that you have an eye to the future as well as slogging through your present. And then obviously support for you and your kids is premium. So one of the questions that came through while we were talking is, are accounts in my name considered my personal property? And the answer is, it depends. And some things are and some things aren't, and some things depend on the state that you're in. If you're in a community property state, it's looked at differently, and your legal professionals can help you with tease out some of this information. And in addition to that, if an account is in your name and it's been in your name since before the marriage was solidified, it's possible that it could stay as part of your personal property, but it also may be pulled into the divorce. So it really does depend. But anything that started out in individual name and remains in individual name and it hasn't been commingled with the marital assets may be something that can be kept separate, and you should ask those questions of the person who's helping you legally. So again, we welcome any information. If we can help you with any of this information, if you have questions regarding the content, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to answer questions to the extent that I can. If they're a little too involved and it requires a lot of legwork, I'll let you know. But happy to help you with any simple questions. And remember to take care of yourself in this process. So thanks very much for attending our webinar. It'll be recorded in a few days and available on our website. So if you know other people who may benefit from it, point them in our direction, and that's 12pointswealthmanagement.com. So thanks very much for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your week.